So we are looking at today the same thing that we talked about yesterday. Some rules about rational numbers with exponentials. So if you have the same base and they're to a different exponents, you just add the exponents together. If you have a number like a to the m to the nth, they're multiplied together. If you have two numbers that are in parentheses multiplied together to an exponent, it's each of those numbers like a to the m, b to the m. If you have a to the negative n, it is 1 over a to the n. Okay. And if you have two numbers that are being divided, like a to the m over a to the n, you go a m minus n, you subtract the exponents. And remember, if you have a fraction raised to a power, the top and the bottom are both to that number. Okay, and then there's some examples right there. All right, so we're going to go through and we're going to do example 1, 2, and 3. We're going to do the problems from those. Please make sure you write them on your paper. Okay, so is this yesterday's? Do I have yesterday's in front of me? I do. Luckily, the top is the same. Here we go. That looks more like yours. All right, so if we look at A, the base is the same. We have 5 for a base for both of these. So I know that I'm going to just add my exponents together. 1/4 plus 3/4 is 4/4. 4/4 is what, guys? 1. So it's 5 to the 1, so that's just 5. Okay. I've got a negative exponent right here. It's negative 2/3. Okay. That means it's 1 over 27 to the 2/3. 1 over 27 to the 2/3. Okay. You can put this into your calculator, but I think we're just going to simplify these for right now. Okay. We've got 3 to the 1/3 to the 2/5. That means we're multiplying them. We're going 1/3 times 2/5. 1 times 2 is 2. 3 times 5 is 15. So it's 3 to the 2/15. Okay. Questions so far? I feel like it's still not.
So you multiply the top one on the
1 times 2 is 2.
Yeah.
3 times 5 is 15. Yep. Yep, that was the base that was the same. Okay, now here, I've got two bases that are the same, right? I got 8 and 8. And I've got 2/3 and 1/3. So I'm just going to go 2/3 minus 1/3. And I get 1/3. So I get 8 to the 1/3. That's what it simplifies to. Okay. We've got 1 over z to the negative 1/3. 1 over z to the negative 1/3. We've got a negative. I know it's on the bottom, so we flip it and we put it on the top. Z to the positive 1/3. It's because it's negative. You flip it. Yep. If it's negative, you flip it. All right. F. We've got, am I going too fast? Are you guys okay? We're good? Okay. F, we've got z to the 2/5 times z to the 1/4. So I know I want to add them, right? Because that's my rule. But 2/5 plus 1/4 I can't do, right? Because the bottoms are not the same. Yep. Okay, so we need to change that. What goes into both 5 and 4 evenly? So I'm going to tell you this, always, always, and forever. If you can't, if you're like 5 and 4, oh, I don't know. You can always multiply them. What's 5 times 4? 20. Okay, so I know 20 goes into both of those, right? 5 times what gave me 20?
4.
So I'm going to multiply the top by 4. I'm just going to write that in so we remember. 4 times 2 is 8. Okay. We multiplied the top and bottom here by 5 because 5 times 4 is 20. So 5 times 1 is 5. Now 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I get 13 over 20. Make sure you put the final answer as z to the 13 over 20. Okay? Make sure you put z to the 13 over 20. Okay? You don't want to just give 13 over 20 because you will not get full credit. Okay. Anybody have any more questions about those?
No.
All right, let's turn it over. Okay. All right. We've got x to the 1/2 times x to the 1/5. Okay? So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to make this into the simplest form. So we know we want to do 1/2 plus 1/5. What do 5 and 2 both go into evenly, guys? 10, right? We just multiply them together. That always works. We might have to reduce later. So I'm going to multiply the top and bottom of this first one by 5. Gives me 5 over 10. 5 times what gives me 10? 2. So if we multiply the top and bottom by 2, we get 2 tenths. What's 5 tenths plus 2 tenths? 7 tenths. Don't leave it like that. Put that x to the 7 tenths. And then I'm all done. Okay. What do I do for this next one? X to the 3rd, parentheses 1/2. X to the 3rd, parentheses 1/2. Do you guys remember? You multiply. Yep. So 3 times 1/2 is x to the 3/2. Yep. Okay. All right, now we're getting into this 4th root thing. Okay. So if we're not going to use our calculator at first, let's think about that. What's the 4th root of 81? Okay. 4th root of 81. Okay. So, what times what times what gives us 81? 9 times 9 gives us 81, but we need 4 things. So 9 is a good place to start. What times what gives me 9? 3. So let's think about this. Does 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 give me 81?
3 times 3 is
Right. So my 4th root for 81 is 3. Okay. How many, now I'm looking at x to the 6th. I like to write it out at first. I've got 6 x's. Okay. Now let's pretend we need 3s of something. You know how when we did 2s, we did like how many pairs of socks? This is like you need 3 in order to call it a group. How many groups of 3 do you have? 2. So we can take x squared out because we have 2 groups of 3. Except this is not 3. This is to the 4th. Okay. So let's try that again. How many groups of 4 do I have here? 1. So I just take out 1 x and I have 2 in the inside. Okay, so I still have 2 x's here. Woo! Okay. Now, for y's, I have 8 y's. How many groups of 4 do I have? I have 2 groups of 4. So I can take out y squared. So my final answer is 3x y squared. And then I have the 4th root x squared. Okay, let's look at D. D is the square root. So I think this is a little bit easier to remember square root. What's the square root of 16? 4. Okay, how many pairs for x to the 4th do I have? 2.
16?
So 16, 4 times 4 is 16, right? So that's how I took it out of the square root. So I have 2 pairs. How many pairs of y's do I have? I have, so for, this should be 4x squared, because I have 2 pairs. For y to the 5th, I have 2 pairs. So I'm going to say the square root of y is left over, right? Because I have 1 left over. Does that make sense? Like, here, I have 5 y's, right?
Yeah.
I have 1, 2 pairs, so that's how I got y squared. And then I have 1 y left over. Okay. All right, what's the square root of 25? What times what gives me 25? 5. How many pairs of z's do I have? If I have 4 z's, I have 2 pairs.
How did you know to do pairs of 2?
Because if it's just a root like this, it means it's square root. It's 2 of 2.
Okay.
Otherwise, it has a number.
Well, those two, you can square that.
Yep. Yep. All right, let's look at E. Okay. I've got to do this in parts. Okay? So I've got the third root. I've got the third root of x times the third root to x to the third. All right, let's think about this first of all. X to the third root is just going to be what? How many, if I have 3 x's, how many pairs of 3's do I have? 1. So I've got x to the third times x. All over, what's the square root of 16? 4. How many pairs do I have of x to the 12? Try that again. 6. Right? Because if I listed out 12 and I did it in pairs, I'd have 6 pairs, right? Okay, so we still have to solve this top part. Do you guys remember what I can turn this into if I was going to change this to a exponent instead of a third root? Is x being raised to any number in the inside? Is there any number, little exponent next to x? So it's to the third root, so that's to the 1/3. So I have x to the 1/3 times x to the 1. What do I do with those? I add them together, right? X to the 1 power, or x to nothing, is the same as 3 over 3. Do we agree? So we add them together, and we get x to the 4/3 over 4x to the 6th. Okay? All right. We'll leave it at that for right now. All right, we're going to look at F, which I didn't leave enough room for. Here. Okay. So I've got x to the 4th to the 5th root and x to the 3rd to the 8th root. Let's change these into exponents. So it's x to the 4/5. Remember, what's ever on your root goes on the bottom of a fraction, over x to the 3/8. Now remember, if they're like this, I can subtract. So I want to go 4/5 minus 3/8. Okay, you guys remember with fractions, the bottom have to be the same? So what does 4 and 8 both go into evenly? If you can't think of a great number, just multiply them together. What's 5 times 8? 40. So I know I'm going to have to, this is by 5, so I know I'm going to have to multiply this by 8. This is 8, so I'm going to have to multiply this by 5. 8 times 4 is 32. 5 times 3 is 15. Then 32 minus 15 is 17. So 1740s, remember your final answer has to be x to the 1740s. Done. Okay, I'm going to move this over slightly so we can do G. All right, G is the cube root. What's the cube root of 8? What times what gives us 8? 2. How many groups of 3 is 6? If I had, yep, I've got 2 groups, right? So that's x squared. How many groups of 3 does 12 have? 4. Okay, what times what gives me 27? I need the same number multiplied 3 times. 3. You're done. A little extra thinking, but we can do this. All right. Here's my question for H. Are both of these taken to the 6th root? Root 6. Yeah, so we can just multiply the insides. 9 times 6 is 54. I'm going to put that 6th root on the outside. X times x to the 12th gives us x to the 13th. Y to the 6th. All right. Now, I'm going to ignore my 54 because it doesn't, there's not something that I multiply 6 times that gives me 54. But how many groups of 6 does 13 have? 2, with 1 left over, right? How many groups of 6 does y have? Y to the 6th. 1, right? So that's our final answer. Okay, I want you guys to save these notes because the bottom we're going to do tomorrow. We're going to do example 3 tomorrow. So we've got the rest of the hour to work on the odds of those problems from yesterday.